Thank you for being willing to listen to the tale I have to tell you. Allow me to give you a little understanding of the background to this tale before we meet those so greatly affected by it. The people of this region were by and large Catholic, and because the late Revolution was inspired mainly by Presbyterians, not much notice was taken of it. The people were getting on with their lives and were perfecting the art of survival in a harsh environment. Into this area at that time came a new couple. Their name was Stout, and it wagged a lot of tongues in Outdooish because it was so unusual. They were supposed to be related to Rob McFarland, who was the landlord of the area, but there was a lot of mystique about them, and the Stouts kept themselves to themselves, which allowed scope for rumours amongst the local community.
They'll not last a year in this place, sure it wouldn't, Grace Snipes.
McFarland gave the Stouts a small plot of land in the throat of the glen, a more inhospitable place it would be hard to imagine. But Andy Stout proved to be a thrifty man, and given the opportunity to develop his plot, he set about it eagerly. He was, as neighbours said, a ferocious worker, and in time, and with the support of his wife Martha, turned his plot into a work of art. Then there was good news. A baby girl was born to the Stouts, and they were extremely proud. They called the child Anna Marie. She grew into a handsome girl with dark brown hair and a beautiful complexion, and as she developed, her character and personality matched her physical beauty. Her overriding trait was sunniness and happiness. The neighbours loved her, and her parents adored her. She came to love the outdoors, and from a very early age would often accompany her father on his journeys. Anna Marie would marvel at the size of the world around her, and Andy Stout marvelled at his daughter's growing awareness.
Daddy, if I die before you, will you bury me on top of this hill so I can see the whole world forever?
Andy Stout felt a shiver run down his spine, for he had seen so much of death in past times.
You have your whole life ahead of you.
Daddy, why does our Durish burn twist and turn like that in its way to the river?
Because there's lots of obstacles in the way. That burn is on its way to the ocean. And I think life is like that. Lots of obstacles along the way. But I think one day all our differences will be dissolved in a different sort of ocean.
Will that ocean be an ocean of love?
Of course it will, Anne-Marie. Of course it will.
As I have said, Anna Marie loved the outdoors, and nothing more so than the large ravine that lay beyond her house. There was a particular waterfall that fascinated her. To her great mind it was huge, and she could watch the water cascading over the edge and fall foaming into the pool below. Sometimes in the summer they would wade into the pool and stand under the cascading water. It was such fun. And sometimes they would wander through the purple heathers and the slopes of the heath and feast on the bilberries that grew in abundance there. Their tongues and lips would turn purple as they ate, and they would stick out their tongues and laugh uproariously. The climax of the story begins when Anna Marie was about 12 years of age. It was a sunny summer evening, and Anna Marie was outside playing with her dog. She was playing on the patch of ground between Outdooish Burn and her father's ridges. Suddenly her dog was startled. There was another dog approaching, and Anna Marie watched it intently. She realised it was ill.
That poor animal's sick.
Anna Marie moved closer and stretched out her hand, but when she saw the glazed look in the dog's eyes, she froze. The dog, sensing movement, snapped blindly and caught the girl's arm, leaving a slight graze there. Anna Marie came to life, turned and ran, and the dog sloped off into the mountain. The girl went to the stream, washed the graze, saw the wound was slight, and dismissed the incident from her mind. But by and by Anna Marie began feeling unwell. She got a severe itch at the sight of her dog bite, and then suddenly she began getting a twitch in her neck. The illness developed rapidly, twitching increased, foaming appeared at the mouth, and there were signs of hallucinations.
Daddy, am I going to die?
What?
Am I going to die, Daddy?
Of course not, of course not.
The neighbours observed and watched what was happening, and they became scared and they carried stories away with them.
The devil's at work in this house.
And as the stories went round, they became wilder. It wasn't natural for Martha to have a child at her age. It wasn't natural the amount of crops that Andy was producing.
Christmas tree possessed.
Shut up, woman.
It was not too long before the Stouts heard about these rumours. When matters were coming to a head, Martha told her husband that she'd heard about a priest living in the village who was supposed to have great power in his hands, and although they were Protestant, Andy should go to the priest and ask for help to alleviate their pain.
Father, what I'm asking you to do is bring our daughter's suffering and ours to an end.
And how do you think that I could do that?
My wife believes that you have the power of life and death in your hands. I don't believe that, but your hands are anointed. They can be forgiven anything.
Is there nothing that can be done to save the child?
Nothing. She doesn't even recognize us anymore.
The priest kept nodding his head, but the truth was that he was hearing nothing new. This very evening he'd had a delegation of his parishioners, and he knew very well about their ugly mood. He had counselled them about their unchristian behaviour, but he was dealing with an irrational mob.
Andy, go home, gather the neighbours who can support you, and have them to come to your house tomorrow night, and I will meet you there. But Andy, I must put you under the strictest oath, never to repeat what we have discussed tonight, ever again.
Thank you, Father, thank you.
Andy left the priest and made his way home. On the outskirts of the village, a number of men were standing, and it was obvious that they were talking about him. Then a man shouted from the comfort of the crowd,
Andy Stout! Do you hear me, Stout? You're not wanted here, you're nothing but a damn spy set among us. Get out! Get out while you can!
Andy moved on until he came to a laneway leading to his homestead. He sat down in a ditch and he cried. This was the last straw, he thought.
That man doesn't know. And he'll never know that I damn near swung on a rope for his cause. Now they've a priest living freely in Crannan, building a new chapel. And they would have none of that only for me taking up their cause in 98. Little they know I was only one step away from the law when I reached this haven.
The priest was as good as his word. The next evening he came to their home. Having asked the parents to leave, he began to pray.
Benedicate omnipotens Deus, Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen.
After a time, there was silence. There is nothing like a young death to unite a people, and the ones who only yesterday were openly opposed found their common humanity and were ashamed. The Stouts, for their own part, were very forgiving, for they knew what fear can do, for they had been there themselves in the past. It was many years later, and too late for Andy and Martha Stout, when the signs and symptoms of rabies became known, and it was realised that this was a disease that Anna Marie had contracted when she'd been bit by that dog. Every house in the upper regions of our Durish Valley is now derelict. Last week I stood in the still visible ridges that Andy Stout had carved out of the poor land, and I observed the rickle of stones that at one time had been their dwelling. In my mind I went back to that eventful day, and I stood there with those people at the bedside, and I joined them in their grief.